YouTube, we got the S23 Ultra in the building. Now, in my previous video, an Apple user switched from his iPhone 13 Pro Max, took the SIM card out and put it in the S23 Ultra. It's been a week since then, and I gotta update you guys with my brutally honest, uncolored opinion. Also note that I am an owner of the previous generation S22 Ultra. There's a lot of good improvements in the S23 Ultra coming from S22 Ultra that are positive, but there also are some disappointing things that are still happening in the S23 Ultra that we've seen in previous Samsung models. We're gonna talk about all of this and more. Now let me get something clear. I don't rush content, I don't rush reviews, I don't rush for views. I take my time. Now 1 week is nowhere near enough to give a full comprehensive review on a product for you to make a well-discerned purchase decision. But I do got some notes and some remarks and some things that I've noticed in this 1 week that's gonna help you get there, but I would highly recommend you wait for the 2-week review and even more for the 1-month review. If you can. If you need a device now, you know, money burning your pocket, whatever, do what you gotta do. But here's my 1 week brutally honest perspective. Now the S23 Ultra, let's start off with design. Uh-oh, hold up, player. I didn't ask you for your you know, she's trying to show out. Trying to say, look at me. There's some positives in the design, in the improvement arena, even though not much changed. That's the running joke. I had to do it again. But the design choice and flattening the edges, which is probably going back to its Note essence, you know, because this is the Note replacement, But I'm loving the flat edge design. I'm so thankful Samsung chose to go this route, and it makes holding this device, it makes the confidence of using this device increase tremendously. So let me tell y'all this real quick. You know, iPhone flat edges, you know, some people said it was too sharp, they didn't like it. The plus about the Samsung's flat edge is kind of rounded at the edge. I will say this, I like it. It's reminiscent of what I know and like of the iPhone, but with a slight twist because it got the rounded, you know, portion at the corner, which makes it, you know, less pointy. I'm able to, you know, one hand this device, use this device, grip it like confidently. And that means a lot. Like this device, trying to grip it with the rounded edges, I don't even understand why we've held on to the rounded edges for so long in the Android world and community. Like, it's obviously not the best choice. Yes, it's nice, like in an ergonomic sense, you know, for being comfortable as far as like against the palm, but so is this. And it gives me more grip, and I love that. Like, this is the improvement that we needed from a design perspective, going from the S22U into the S23U. Now, even more in the design perspective, we have a camera redesign or improvement, or, you know, megapixel bonanza, which we're gonna get into that because that area is where controversy lives. And then we have the beautiful Samsung displays. Now, when we talk about Samsung displays, the reason why there's such an enthusiasm behind them is just they're color calibrated for vibrance, saturation, and just visual appeal. Now, my only gripe with Samsung displays in comparison to like me as a typical iPhone user is color calibration. That's one thing that's on Apple's displays that's calibrated extremely well, and that's something I rely on as someone who wants to see what it really is. And the lack of that color calibration, I think, creates the issue that I have also in the camera department, which I'm going to talk more about. Now, let me just note this, man. I don't understand. Samsung, why sell a S23 Ultra device and broadcast that it has quad HD display, but you ship it in full HD? It makes absolutely no sense. So if you have this device and you haven't done so, run directly to your settings department and switch it to quad HD. Unless you're just trying to save battery or whatever, you can stay at full HD. But if I paid for a quad HD display, I'm gonna use it. And I do this every single time I get one of these devices, and I don't understand for the life of me why Samsung ships it in full HD. We know why. It's to help boost that battery, you know, perspective. But when we talk about battery in this device, which is coming up, we're talking in a positive sense, at least for now. So hands down, watching content on this display is always as pleasant as it has been on all of the previous flagship Samsung devices. So there's no difference there. This is a nice, big, tall, massive display. This display is humongous. And, you know, outside of you know, the Galaxy Z Fold, which has an even larger display, this is it. Now, the next area I want to talk about is performance, and this is the area that's actually really dope because I kept One UI. I usually, when I get a Samsung device, I instantly jump into, I don't have my S22 on right now, obviously trying to save the battery on it while it's not in use, but I usually jump directly into Nova Launcher. Not that I hate One UI, but you know, One UI has been high. It's not terrible, right? But there's certain limitations. I would love to make my grid smaller. I would love to make my icons smaller and have more icons on the grid. Can you give me that, Samsung? I would be so much more happier. But in general, seeing a lot of the updates and changes with One UI 5 and the customization, and just look at this fluidity right here. Like, this is a really fire user experience from the performance perspective. Now, we're on that, you know, Gen 2 of the Snapdragon 8 and all that stuff, which is just giving a slight performance boost, basically like overclocking the chip of Gen 1 and pulling more out of it, getting more GPU performance and things like that. But just let's get out of the benchmark nonsense and let's just talk about everyday use. And that's where the performance is noticeable. Like me coming in and out of my apps and me swiping, hold on, I can't show y'all my DMs or nothing like that, but just the fluidity of these apps and going from app to app and out of app and things like that. Just the overall efficiency and the collective, which all equals what performance is, which leads into that user experience, which is the most important, and that'll be the last topic I talk about in this 1 week update. It's all coming together. It's gelling together really well. And this is what I was pushing out of Samsung when I would tell them, yo, you need to make your devices more efficient. Hint, you do that and look at the response from the crowd, the tech community, and everyone. But here's the thing. See, Samsung using external chips from Snapdragon, which shout out to Snapdragon being on every single device this year, they have to work together collectively and more like in tune with Snapdragon, which they did on this Gen 2 chip in order to get it to work more efficiently with the Samsung ecosystem. That was the issue. In the previous Snapdragons, they were just, hey, we made this chip, here you go, but it wasn't calibrated for efficiency out of what Samsung does with their devices. We're getting more in tune with that. And there's also a rumor of SoC coming to Samsung and taking the place of Snapdragon, which can be exciting considering what we've seen Apple do on their devices with their SoC. Super lit. So if we could get that here in the Samsung ecosystem, we're talking big leaps and bounds. Now, the next area I want to talk about is just platform. And that's kind of where I was leading into considering talking about like the efficiency, talking about One UI. One UI 5 is pretty dope. The new like lock screen setup, which is, I mean, come on, let's be real. It's very reminiscent of Apple. I was able to go from what I'm used to on my Apple lock screen and have a similar experience. I can get my notifications and that wide out, you know, expansion, and just having that option, being able to kind of like make it like what I'm used to or like what I'm comfortable with coming from an iPhone is smart, because if you really think about it, even going more than the joking of saying, hey, Samsung took from Apple, you know, that lock screen design, which I mean, obviously they did, but it's smart because if I want to convert Apple users into what I have, I'm giving them something familiar, and that's the best way to do it. So that's an extremely smart, you know, how would you say it? What's the word? Smart move. Disrespect, smart move right there, because as someone who's an Apple user switching over is still feeling familiar. Now there's a lot that's different if you're coming from the Apple ecosystem jumping into the Samsung ecosystem, and one of those big benefit things that you're gonna see in this platform is just the freedom, the customization, and how far you can take it. With One UI 5, I can now, like, say I want my icons to match my background color theme, I can do that. My one gripe and issue with it is it doesn't do it to every single icon. Okay, bam, we're gonna go to wallpaper style, right? So I can go to color palette. Now I can do apply palette to app icons, right? And I can hit apply. But when I go back here, you're gonna see that, hold on, let me get me out of focus. Not every icon has changed. Instagram is still looking like IG and so forth, YouTube and beyond. So even if I go into my app drawer, as you guys can see, not every icon has changed. And that to me, like, I mean, that's where you fix it with Nova Launcher, because I can officially change my icon pack and make sure that they all match and they're all equal. But I enjoy the effort because that effort is fun. It's something to look forward to for a lot of people. Boom. Okay, got rid of that. Went back to the regular icons, which I like with this setup. So platform-wise, I'm loving the improvements. I'm loving the direction that Samsung is going. It's a positive perspective. So that's the joy, right? And another thing adding on to that joy, the next section we got to talk about is battery life. Now, I don't like to speak fully, like in depth on battery this early because let's be honest, you could get a device. Every device, when you first get them, the battery is generally like phenomenal. Now, it's funny because on the iPhone, when the 14 Pro Max first dropped, the battery life was kind of questionable, but then a couple updates later, it's like what we know it to be. I critique Samsung on the S22 Ultra for not having battery life, although having a larger physical battery than the iPhone 14 Pro Max or iPhone 13 Pro Max for that matter, if we want to keep it fair, not having the same or similar battery life. Unacceptable. You got the biggest and baddest machines, quote unquote, on paper, yet in a user experience you weren't delivering until now. So far, 1 week later, this is just early, you guys. You gotta, put some more run through on this. But again, so far the platform is showing efficiency improvements. Battery life, battery life, battery life. The battery life is looking extremely promising this year on the S23 Ultra. Again, I don't want to get too hyped and caught up in just 1 week results. I want to drill it and I want to push it hard. But so far, you know how it is. You got the new device, you got that honeymoon phase, you be on that joint. So far, the battery has been impressive. And I'm excited to see this in this device because it has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and there's no reason that this device with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery didn't have the same battery life. You get what I'm saying? So that's why, you sensitive Samsung Knights, when I was cooking this one, and some of you were cooking it along because that's where I get a lot of my insights from you guys in the comment section. Oh, you be talking so bad about Samsung. No, I'm pushing them to do this. You're welcome. We got to come here to the camera section. And this is where the disappointment comes into play. I told you guys during my live stream on my first impressions, the number one thing I'm looking for is skin tone representation. I have had it for so many years. I've dealt with Samsung cameras and they're over brightening, over lightening, over smoothing, undersaturating, non-skin tone calibrating cameras. And I'm fed up with it. Like 99% of smartphone camera use is gonna be that user taking photos of themselves, especially selfies. Now, I will say this. I took a look at some of the footage. It seems that the selfie camera, if I'm not mistaken, is better at the skin tone. It's not perfect. Than the rear camera, the big 200 megapixel, 50 megapixel, whatever, pixel, blah, blah, blah. How is it that the selfie camera is doing better at skin tone representation than the money camera? This is the money shot. Well, yeah. So it baffles me that when I use this camera, and when I take photos of myself or video of myself, I'm not seeing myself. And that's a problem. So I'm gonna take you guys outside and I'm gonna discuss this camera, the disappointment of it, and the positives. Like there are some positives, not all doom and gloom, but for me, I'm gonna be real, and me being brutally honest, it's not the best. It's not where it should be, in my opinion. When you have pixel calibrating for my skin tones, you have the iPhone that's not necessarily 100% calibrated, but it's doing better than what you're doing with skin tones. But I still feel like the iPhone can do better, but it does better than the S23 Ultra. Let's go outside. So, as you guys can see, when I'm shooting products, or I'm shooting items, or shooting at things that other than myself, which have a skin tone, I think the quality is there. But this is my area of concern because when I look at the viewfinder, like the screen, I see my skin tones represented. But the story is different when you actually take the footage off of this device, or if you upload it or whatever, the real footage. But nevertheless, just in general, I think camera quality is mid-tier. It's good. And the reason why I gotta be so hard on it is because the quality is there for the majority, but in general, we gotta be real. There's other cameras that do it better. Now, if we flip to the rear facing camera, 4K, again, 4K 30, I think, let's just see. We got some sun, we got some light. We got the best possible situation for this sensor to perform in its best offering. But what is that exact offering? And how does it level up to other cameras in the market? I'm at this point too, I mentioned this before, where I'm over the whole AI compensation for lack of physical sensor, and I would just prefer a larger physical sensor. But with that all being said, let me switch to 8K video. 8K video on a cell phone to me is a gimmick. It's cap. It's like, what's the point? Like, is it realistic? Who's really out here looking for 8K video out of a device? It's nice to be able to say, hey, our device shoots in 8K, but what's the true real world benefit? You know what I mean? There's file sizing and all of that stuff. At the end of the day, it's cap. But my thing is 8K gonna give me better skin tones? You gotta deliver or over deliver. Those are the only two ways it can go, Samsung, okay? Now, gripes aside, all in all, you know, I think in general, this camera, the majority of users are gonna find it pleasant. So I'm just over the smoothing, I'm over the AI compensation, I'm just over the cap. And I just want to see good sensors, good physical sensors with good color calibration, all inclusive. And that's just where I stand. And I got one more thing to say as I use another gimmick feature, which is portrait mode, another AI, you know, enhanced, you know, artificial thing. But I just think it's unfair that your display tells me something different than what is actually the truth. That's false advertising. And hey, I know. The truth hurts, and that's why I gotta be brutally honest when I talk about this stuff. And a lot of people aren't gonna like it, especially you brand loyalists who just thinks that your brand can do no wrong or everything is perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect smartphone. So let's get as close to that as we can by telling them when it's not right. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up some of this footage that I got from outside, and I'm gonna go over it with you guys, right? When I look at this video footage of me shooting my car and just walking around it, the things that bother me in Samsung cameras and why I always give them gripe is the micro jitters and then the ISO jumps. Like it's like I don't get it. I don't understand why that's such a thing. So like here walking, shooting the Whole Foods bag, getting up to the whip, looks fine. Now, this is a selfie camera, and right here I can say that I feel like my skin tones are fairly decent. I just feel like there's a lack of the contrast that's necessary to really, and the saturation to make my skin tone be represented as it truly is. And then it gets green when I get inside right here, which is, I don't know. So if I flip to this one, this is another, you know, lower light situation, front facing camera. That's actually doing fairly okay with my skin tone. So I'll give them credit there. Now, if I jump over here, this is the outside shot. This is rear camera, 4K, 30 frames per second, and you know, you guys can see the Yeezys and the drip and whatnot, but shooting like this looks good. Now, when I flip it to me, my skin tones are okay, actually. Like, this is the front-facing camera, and this is what I was talking about. The front-facing camera actually is gonna represent better than the rear. And I'm gonna show you a perfect example of that when I flip right here to the rear. Now, if I go back to the rear, it's still like I don't get why it has to be so bright, Samsung. Everyone isn't bright, okay? But like right here, you can see the artificial intelligence smoothing out my skin tones far more than necessary. It also has like this yellowish tint to my skin tone, and so forth. But like my shirt and my hoodie, they look fairly okay. It's like a lack of contrast. I don't know. And then this right here, I believe, is 8K video, which someone pointed out that the 8K video has like some jitters to it and so forth. And then some more front facing, which I'm starting to kind of like the front facing video a bit more than, especially a lot more than the rear facing. Another front facing with the, you know, the fake bokeh, fake blurry background, which actually is represented pretty okay in this shot. I'm not even gonna lie. But it's just still though, like, my biggest issue in Samsung cameras is color accuracy, color representation. And here's the even bigger issue I have. The Samsung display, right? So beautiful, so saturated, so what we all love, but so not color calibrated for accuracy. So when you look at your photos and your videos on this display playing back to you, it's showing you something different than what the true story is when you pull these files off of this phone and you put them on a calibrated display and you actually look at what they really look like. And I think that's where it's a problem for me. And that's where it's false advertisement. And that's where I don't like it. I don't like the Samsung camera setup. I don't like the app. When everyone used to put Google Cam, because Google has way better processing on the Samsung device, it would take the Samsung camera to the next level. Why should we even have to do that? Just pay Google for their proprietary Google Cam, if Google's willing to part with that. Let's move into user experience, you guys. On a more positive note, user experience. Outside of my camera experience, if I focus on this device, using it, watching video content, and enjoying consuming, YouTube videos and so forth. Another question people ask me is in the speaker department, right? I did do a little listen off from the S22 Ultra to the S23 Ultra. And I'll be honest, here, this phone isn't on. Let me turn it on. Let me be real. I've heard better speakers. I've heard better speakers in a smartphone. And when you hear better, you know worse or not as good. You know what I'm saying? So it's not terrible. Don't take it for that. Your viewer experience, watching YouTube and all that is gonna be really good. But as someone who's very into audio, I can say that Samsung isn't giving us a speaker setup that we've had of the past. But that aside, watching YouTube, scrolling through my IG feed, my Twitter feed, being on TikTok, doing what people use smartphones to do, you're gonna enjoy your user experience in general. At least I've enjoyed it so far in this 1 week. It's been pretty pleasant outside of the camera. I gotta get a camera is buckets, because at this point I'm just annoyed with Samsung and their lack of care or lack of attention to camera. And you know what's funny? They spent 2/3 of the whole event talking about their camera for filmmaking and stuff. Cap, Coco, you capping, man. So, okay, S22 Ultra. All right. Woo. They claim they want beef like I ain't in that seat up. I turn them to vegan. I'm really a creature. She sent me the beacon. I beat it in S22. Oh yeah, it's a big difference. Oh wow. All right, right there, doing it on the spot and putting them side by side. The S23 Ultra has improved in audio and speaker quality. I don't want to overhype it, because I don't want people with the S22 Ultra to feel like they got to go get this. But yes, the sound is better. I'm gonna just chill out, right? But as I've told you guys, my 1 week so far, user experience, as in Apple user primarily, has been pleasant on this S23 Ultra. And if you guys know me, then you know that I'm a huge fan of the Samsung Galaxy Note, which is no longer. Now, I know the S23 Ultra and S22 Ultra is supposed to be a, replacement for the Note by, adding an S Pen to it, but I still don't feel noteworthiness out of any Ultra device, because the Note is supposed to be the creme de la creme. Now, there are foldable devices. There's the Z Fold and the Z Flip, which I think have a huge potential to shape the smartphone market going further, but they also have a huge way to go in stability and just durability for the masses. But all in all, so far, 1 week with the S23 Ultra has been legit. My biggest gripe and my biggest disappointment is in the camera arena. And if that's something that's big to you, if you've had gripes with Samsung's cameras in the past, then you're still gonna continue to have those gripes in the present, unfortunately. But there still is joy in the battery life. There still is joy in the performance and the platform and the snappiness of this device. There still is joy in the user experience. I'm just disappointed with the camera.